Africans who are trying to get out of Lebanon, who were maids in Lebanon, don't even have their passports because their passports were kept by their employers, so to speak. But also it's the same crisis that happened in Oman as well, where people went in as maids from Kenya and also from Zimbabwe as well, and other African countries, and they are in captivity in those spaces.
They're going for young Africans because they cost less. Like it's a version of cheap labor, is what I'm wondering about, what I'm thinking about. What's your opinion on that, and how are you making sense of it?
And remote job comes with this framework, which is sweatshoppy for me, to be honest, because it sounds like they are running capitalistic sweatshops where they get the cheapest labor but they get the most profits on the business.
The African candidates, right, don't perform as well as other candidates. And when you're looking at performance, really, what they're looking at is
the way of saying you're not doing well in Africa is not the same in Eastern Europe specifically. In Africa, we even our feedback is different. We put a layer of good feedback. We put bad feedback in the middle, then we close it up and we sandwich it with some good feedback or some good prognosis of how things could be. In Eastern Europe, at least with people that I've worked with, if you're not doing well, if you're doing a shit job, you're doing a shit job, and they say it that way.
How can you avoid getting scammed? There are telltale signs. I always say, when
Africans on Africa, let's go.
Africans on Africa podcast episode 10. Tabiso, we have been at it for 10 episodes, and today we are shooting the 10th episode. And in this process, we have been trying to create African dialogues that are borderless. And I think the conversation today gets us one step to doing that, as we are going continental, but also in this episode we are going global. But before we introduce the guest that we have on the podcast today, Tabiso, I just read an article today that says the Minister of Home Affairs within South Africa has just signed into law the fact that people from other countries now can have or attain a visa that allows them to work in South Africa. If you're a remote worker or someone who wants to come and work remotely within South Africa, there is a visa now that allows you to do that within the South African space. Immediate thoughts, Tabiso?
Wait, what does that mean? You can have a job in Norway and be Zimbabwean and move to South Africa to work from South Africa for the Norwegian company. Am I understanding?
Yes, that's exactly what it means.
So I know, didn't you used to work for a Norwegian company?
It was a Norwegian company based and registered in the States.
And you were working from South Africa?
Yes. But I was kind of staying in South Africa, but now you can have a visa that allows you to work for that company and stay within South Africa on that visa. So even if you're not staying in South Africa before,
what have you been up to? This is a very specific visa with details that match you. What have you done?
What do you mean, what have I done? This is not about me. This is about everybody else who is not staying in South Africa. I stayed in South Africa before. I was studying in South Africa. I was working and studying as well. So that does not cover me, because this is for people who are aspiring to actually stay in South Africa. I know countries like the Bahamas have such visas as well.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I haven't followed the news on that, but from what you're describing, it's an odd one for me. So like if you're doing that, you're moving to a country to work from there, potentially for a different country. What is your economic contribution to the country you're living in?
You pay rentals. You can buy. You can even buy here in South Africa. You can spend your income within the South African context, and you live and you pay within South Africa.
So you whatever you get paid, you'll be taxed, right, by the South African state. Am I understanding that right? Okay, yes. So there's that contribution. Would they be taxing like remittances as well if you're sending money back home?
I'm not sure if they'll be taxing remittances, but the outright contribution that you'll be making is that whatever you're making, you'll be spending most of it within the South African context, since you will be staying and residing within South Africa as a non-permanent resident.
So basically the visa is, if you are employed, you can come live here.
Yes.
Okay.
If you have
No,
a job, you can come and enjoy the sun and spend your money in South Africa and enjoy the views in South Africa and enjoy the people in South Africa.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think my opinion on visas in general is that I'm generally anti-visas. I understand the point of visas, right? Like people travel to different countries for different reasons, sometimes not so great reasons, and sometimes people overstay the reason they're there, etc., etc. But my thing about visas, I'm against visas, which is why I'm proud of countries like Kenya, when they say Africans can come and go however they want. So I guess it's progress. I don't know, but maybe from the concept of visas, maybe it's progress. But in terms of immigration, there might be more progress in that regard. Not so much in terms of like work and the kind of work you do, blah, blah. And if the state is getting something from it in the form of taxes, I think it's fair. Because currently, my home country, South Africa, is already struggling with people who work in the country and create money from the country and then pay zero taxes and the money goes out of the country, right? So we're already struggling with that, and it has huge impacts. So an example of that, a common example, is the guys, the Somali and Pakistani guys who run tuck shops, what we call spazas, and a lot of their money just goes back home. A lot of it is informal economy, unbanked, untaxed, and yet it's like South Africans who are basically creating all this money, right, through purchase behavior. So there's that part of it. If the taxing is happening, I'm cool, man. I'm cool with that, because I'm more concerned about. And by the way, it's not just. The example I'm giving looks like a mini one, because it's like these guys working in townships, in tuck shops, but it's also happening on a much larger level with. Recently we found out like the Colombians in South Africa dealing drugs. A lot of that is untaxed, of course, and hence why people need to wash money, etc., etc. So when you're thinking about it that way, I'm all for, is it taxed?
Yeah, I'm all for officializing the process of documentation of people, and the more that process gets efficient, for me, that's a win, I think, for everyone. I still struggle to see how the ordinary South African is going to benefit from this, but also how that gets us from a space where migration is a process only of welcoming and making it easy for people who are in this European and the Western countries, rather than also welcoming people who are within African countries. I know there are a lot of people who are working for remote companies within African countries, but I think the beneficiaries of this is mostly going to be the Western people, and also the people who are going to be from the Americas. I don't know if you don't agree with me. By the way, so please let us know.
No, but also like a lot of people from the US are already doing this, right?
Yeah,
on tourist visas, from what
that's
I understand.
Why the Airbnb controversy is in Cape Town, where Airbnb has taken over most property.
We need to invite one of these Americans, right? On the podcast. We will. I promise you guys, we will. There's an influx of Black Americans coming to South Africa and living in South Africa. They go to Cape Town, they go to Johannesburg. I'm not sure if they're buying property. I know a few of them are. And then the whole Airbnb thing. And as a result, people are getting priced out of their hometowns. I mean, if you grew up in in Woodstock, in Cape Town, you'll see like the rent prices going up at Sea Point, Greenpoint, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So that's happening, and I know it's not just Americans, but the most recent that I've seen and experienced is like a lot of Americans coming here, and I don't know, man, it makes me uneasy. It makes me very uneasy. Don't get me wrong, I love people, but geez, it's making me uneasy.
I mean, they're exploring the motherland, but I don't know if they want to stay in the motherland, so to speak. We always talk about this, and I'm sure it's a conversation that we'll bring up on another day as well. But I'm glad that you also brought out the Kenyan conversations and the open border, so to speak, with regards to Kenya, because we are taking it to Kenya today. We have a company called Beyond the Savannah, but we also have the founder of Beyond the Savannah. Her name is Lorraine. She is the person that you need to know, guys, if you want to be able to be connected to the global network in terms of accessing remote work, also accessing remote jobs, but also if you're a company that is looking to be able to do remote work efficiently in Africa, this is the person that you want to talk to. If I look on the Beyond the Savannah website, I see things like getting you from your CV, getting you connected to your career, getting you connected to your jobs, getting your LinkedIn in the AI revolution, and making sure that you get placed at the right job and the correct job. So, all the way from Kenya, guys, I want you to welcome Lorraine to Africans on Africa podcast. But Lorraine, maybe your first drop of the mic, I just want you to introduce yourself, what you do, and where you place yourself with all this remote work revolution that we are moving to within Africa and the world.
Yay! Welcome me, I guess, to African on Africa podcasters. Or do you guys have a name for your followers? Yeah.
Africans.
Africans. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. When I got the invite from Ivan and Tabiso, I was like, yes, let's do this. And on that note, right, I think I'm pro the remote work visa, because when South Africa is thinking about remote work visa, the Kenyan government is actually thinking about sending Kenyans to Saudi Arabia to become house helps, or domestic workers. So I guess in that sense, y'all are more progressive. Yeah, but I guess just me to introduce myself. My name is Lorraine. I'm the founder and career coach over at Beyond the Savannah. We are a company that seeks to promote remote work, particularly to the African youth. And we do that in two ways. One is showcasing the remote work opportunities, and two is engaging in talent readiness. So all the way from your CV to your LinkedIn profile to interviewing, interview prep and coaching, and making sure that basically you're better positioned for the opportunities, you know where to find them, and you are competitive in the market because your competition is global.
Lorraine, we're gonna get into that, but you just tell me. You said the Kenyan government is doing what? Saudi what?
Yes, so the Kenyan government, right? I think that was like 2 months ago. The CS of Labor decided to. We had new CSs, by the way, right? Because of the demonstrations. That
Please
we had.
explain CS for those who don't know what a CS is.
CS is Cabinet Secretary. I think they come. I don't want people to to like greet me, right? I really don't know where they fall when it comes to the government, but I know they are.
Are those the ones who were fired?
Yes, they're the ones who were fired and then they were replaced, like literally garbage in, garbage out. So the new CS of Labor decided, you know what can we do to create employment for the Kenyan youth, because unemployment is like skyrocketing, right? So they decided to build model homes of Middle Eastern homes per se in Mombasa and Nairobi. Reason as to why they decided to build that is because the Kenyan, or rather Kenyans were really struggling when they went to Middle East, right? I don't want to mention whether it's, Saudi Arabia or Dubai or whatever. But we were getting cases of people being unalived, people being treated really horribly, right? And so they decided brilliantly that instead of actually talking with the government in the Middle East and just educating people to treat humans as humans, they decided to build model homes and to educate Kenyans on how to behave when you are in a Middle Eastern home. When I think about, I know. When I think about it, it kind of like the movie that comes to my brain or the series is Roots, and how everyone or the slaves were like taught how to behave in the master's house. It is sad.
So the problem must be Kenyans. Yeah, let's train them.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
exactly. Let's
The
train
problem
our
is
people.
Africans. It's the same thing that is happening currently with the crisis in Lebanon, when the war happening in Lebanon, exposing that Africans who are trying to get out of Lebanon, who were maids in Lebanon, don't even have their passports because their passports were kept by their
Revoked.
employers, so to speak. But also, it's the same crisis that happened in Oman as well, where people went in as maids from Kenya and also from Zimbabwe as well, and other African countries, and they are kept in in captivity in those spaces. I remember there was a documentary that I was watching where a Kenyan woman came back as a body, and one of them came back with their body bruised and burnt. And after they arrived in Kenya, they died. But nothing happened to the
Yeah.
people in Oman who are doing all of these things. And the CSs, that's why they were fired, man. Like, their great idea in that moment is to train Africans to behave, to train Kenyans to behave. Legendary idea.
And not die.
And not die.
Yeah. I thought CS stood for client services.
I
Don't
wish.
For like government positions, you need someone who does client services. Every time there's a protest, they like send the client services guy.
That's funny to be so.
Yeah. But quite fascinating that, Lorraine, you're trying to take people from that space where they rely on such jobs or such creativity from African governments, so to speak. And you're trying to locate them in a space where you prepare them for remote work, but also make connections with companies that are global so that they work in companies that have at least fair treatment for the people that they serve, so to speak. But there's one qualm that I had with your introduction where you said you're focused on serving the African youth. I just turned 36 last month, and it has been someone just told me that that I'm no longer a youth. So if I am in that space, can you still help me if I'm 36 and I need to be connected to remote work? Can you help me? And how do you practically help people to make that connections in terms of getting ready for remote work, getting their CV ready, and placing them in the right jobs?
Trevor said that Kenyans are more nuanced. We tend to beat around the bush. And yes, so by that I mean the African youth, I mean anyone who can still work, like employable, right? You are a youth, regardless. The beauty with remote work companies or remote companies is that they don't discriminate. So whether you have retired and you feel like you want to get back to the job market, yeah, you believe in your skills, whether you are an entrepreneur or you're let's put it this way. If you're of the legal working age in your local country, hit me up. Yeah, you're in the youth category, so we'll get you hired. But how we do that is, like I mentioned, it's all about positioning. So we first have a meeting with you. I refuse to do like a CV revamp, for example, without having a conversation with you, because I need to understand what exactly do you enjoy doing in your day to day. Most people are actually in jobs that they don't enjoy. So for me, I look at this like, if you wanted to re-career, if you wanted to pivot into something new, this is your opportunity. So I want to get into a conversation with you and understand what brings you joy. One, right? What are the qualifications that you have in terms of your education, in terms of your experience? Second, are there ways in which we can upskill you or even reskill you? Yeah. And then let's work on now putting all that into the CV in terms of just selling your skills. And then let's also work on optimizing your LinkedIn so that one, your profile is searchable and visible to recruiters, but also two, because we know most applications do need actually a CV and a LinkedIn profile. Let's get you the proper tools and resources that you need to better enable you and you're looking out for these opportunities. And the beauty with the conversations that you're going to be having is that by the end of, let's say, 30 minutes, which our consultation calls usually are, you will leave the meeting room, because it is all online, knowing which jobs to look out for, which titles to look out for, which makes it a lot easier for a job seeker, because it can get a little bit daunting and confusing when you're navigating the remote work landscape and you don't know. Let's say that customer service jobs are not termed as customer service, rather they're termed as customer success or customer experience, right? So it makes it a little bit easier for you to just navigate the whole remote ecosystem.
You said 30 minutes meeting. If you can do that with Ivan, I'd be very impressed. Ivan can't keep a meeting to 30 minutes. I'll be very impressed. I do have a question. You said upskill or reskill. What's the difference? I've never heard of that.
So let's say, right, you want to move from customer service to HR. Yeah. There is a lot of intersectionality between the two because at the end of the day, you're both dealing with customers. As a HR person, I'm dealing with internal customers. As a customer service person, you're dealing with external customers. At the end of the day, we want both our customers to be satisfied and we need to get feedback from them. So in that case, right, I will, for a customer service professional, when it comes to upskilling, I would want you to do courses with regards to like HR, right? So that is upskilling. When it comes to reskilling, let's take the same example, customer service and HR, because again, a lot of intersectionality between the two. For a HR professional, I would want you now to understand customer journey mapping, right? What it takes, same as employee journey mapping. So what it takes for the company to land a customer, how they do communicate to the customers all the way to when they leave the company. So that is customer journey mapping or the customer experience, which is kind of similar to what HR professionals do when it comes to employee journey, because we want to make sure that your experience as an employee, right from when we are sending out the advert, what you're communicating, all the way to when you're leaving, that you have the most amazing experience. So that is going to be reskilling. Don't know if that makes sense.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I think I
Tabi.
think
So
I think I get it.
Tabi, so I think the only reason why I can't stick to 30 minutes in a meeting is because you call it a meeting. But Lorraine called it a consultation. So I'm always freaked out by the word consultation, Lorraine. How much do I have to pay for this consultation? How much do I have to pay for these 30 minutes? And
Hey,
what's in it for
you're
me?
right. That word is a little scary, yeah?
It is scary. It comes with
Yeah,
an invoice.
yeah, because Western country, I mean West African countries still get consultants from France.
You
There's a
see?
lot of money that flies out.
And consultants get paid more.
They consult. But sorry, Lorraine,
Yeah.
please explain. It's very different. Yeah.
So we try as much as possible to make our products affordable to the African youth. So for example, the consultation call would cost you Kenya shillings 3,500 if you are within East Africa, and if you're not, it's gonna cost you $35. Yeah.
Is it
Oh,
more?
okay.
Is, is it more if you're not, or you just change the currency?
We just change the currency because I also need them dollars. So
Ah, way. But
Yeah,
I think it's a great thing that you
$35.
cover all of Africa.
$35 is what? I mean, like 700 rand, yeah?
About 650, 700 rand.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, fair.
fair, good.
And I think it's great that you cover all the African youth, so everyone who's struggling to get a job, even if you are in Zimbabwe, even if you're in South Africa, I think we need to take hold of this opportunity and scale ourselves. I like the reskilling as well,
Yeah, because like the world is changing, things move, and sometimes you have to adapt all the time. Actually, so reskilling makes sense. Also, like we change as people as we grow. Sometimes our interests shift. Yeah, Lorraine, I want to ask you, in your experience, have you come across like multiple people from a certain country that just rub you the wrong way and keep rubbing you the wrong way?
That's a very interesting question, Tabitha. Have I? I would put it this way. I think with my background in HR, again, I'm gonna get nuanced. I think I have learned to kind of expect different personalities, different communities reacting differently. However, I would say, right, the directness of the white man still at some level, right, still rubs me off the wrong way.
what I hear from direct is that cultures differ, and having worked with global companies as well, what I know is that the way of saying you're not doing well in Africa is not the same in Eastern Europe specifically. You know, in Africa, we like even our feedback is different. We put a layer of good feedback. We put bad feedback in the middle, then we close it up and we sandwich it with some good feedback or some good prognosis of how things could be. You know, in Eastern Europe, at least with people that I've worked with, if you're not doing well, if you're doing a shit job, you're doing a shit job, and they say it that way. There's no, they don't butter it, or they don't put it in a way that's what's the American word for this? What's PC? Is it PC? Yeah, they don't put it in politically correct terms. They just put it how it's supposed to be or how it is.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the conversations that we always have with our clients, right? We talk about when you're gonna get yourself in an environment where you're expected to one, do the research and perform at the same time. Yeah. Two, you're gonna find yourself in environments with different cultures, and different cultures communicate differently. We react to things differently. So rather than taking things at heart, yeah, you kind of need to find a work around it. And one feedback that we got, which is very, very, very sad, really is that the African candidates, right, don't perform as well as other candidates. And when you're looking at performance, really, what they're looking at is how well we are able to, I don't know, like bring out our personality. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get hired because of your likability and the coachability. But in the sense that Africans were colonized and just how we've been socialized, I don't know if it's the same thing in South Africa, but in Kenya, we are taught to kind of like not interject, not ask as many questions, especially if you went through the 844 system. That's like the system that most Kenyan um, people are going to go through. That's like the public system. Yeah, you come out of it a little bit more timid. And when you are in an interview, like I said, your competition is going to be global. In an interview with someone who, wears their heart on the sleeves, they're loud, they let their personality come through, they're going to be seen as more confident than you. And so hence they're going to be seen as a better candidate than you. So I always like to have that conversation with them and just let them know, let your personality come through a little bit. Yeah. It's not a local job.
Lorraine, one of the things that I'm hearing, maybe for lack of this being misunderstood, it almost sounds to me like you're also doing the same thing that the CSs in Kenya are doing, where they are training Africans to behave in remote companies, so to speak. But I like how you are positioned, because also I know you have dialogues with companies that come onto Beyond the Savannah. Are you also having that dialogue with them? Because culture is a two-way thing, and Tabi, so we were talking about it on our last shoot, that people also create culture, and what are you doing in terms of having that conversation with them to say you also need to create a space where African people also bring out their personality, and they don't feel like they are being stifled by the environment, and their voices are not being heard within that environment? Because also our culture is different, and respectful to us sometimes means timid.
Mm-hmm. I'll be very honest with you, not so much. And my reason is my reason is, right, I would rather control what I have within my control, right? So I'm not saying you be a sellout to your own individual personality or to your culture, but at some point you have to work how the world, like you have to learn how the world works, and then you kind of align to it, you get what you want from it, and yeah, if that makes you happy, well and good. So at this stage, perhaps in the next 2 years or next year, we will be embarking on that conversation with more companies as we get to work with more of them. But at this stage, I would rather control what I have control over, and that is working with just educating my clients on what they're going to find in that space, and how then they can respond when they're put or when they find themselves in such situations, right? There's a book, not a book, but like thoughts shape your reality and whatnot. So like when you know how to deal with the enemy, then you're better prepared, kind of thing. Yeah.
I get you. I think it sounds like a lot of work, to be honest. Hey,
And I'm not
so I
Jesus.
get that. No, I get the approach that you're taking. It makes sense. I do also think about, I mean, remote work, especially after like COVID hit, became this buzzword and buzz phrase, and everybody's talking about going remote. And Oh, and then suddenly there are all these articles about why remote work doesn't work, which I think was sponsored by some nefarious entities. Uh, but anyway, my question to you, Lorraine, is this whole trend of remote work and the growth in remote work, do you think ultimately this is good for young Africans? Because I'm getting a bit of a sense of a lot of these companies are going for Africa. That is the trend, right? Especially in like tech, and I think education. They're going for young Africans because they cost less. Like it's a version of cheap labor, is what I'm wondering about. What I'm thinking about. What's your opinion on that? And how are you making sense of it?
I mean, to be very honest, Tabiso, I think it is a case of getting cheap labor. Not all recruiters are going to agree with that. But it is. It is the reality. Because when you look at, let's say, a customer service job, right, that is hiring remotely, for some companies, they will let you know when it comes to the compensation package that they're offering, 70 to 100,000 US dollars annually. But this is dependent on the geographical location you are at. Right. So that means that if you are in Africa, they're going to kind of adjust that to your cost of living lower, right? Which in a sense kind of makes sense. I think it's the lesser evil of, rather than when you compare that to not having a job, or when you compare that to the salary you'll be getting at a local company, right? So
Wait, so the salary for that, if it was the same job, the salary in Kenya
Yes.
will be lower than if the person was.
Exactly. You get, like, let's say a customer service job, entry level, 2 years would earn you anything between $20,000 to $24,000 annually, which brings it to around $2,000, right? That in Kenya shillings at the moment is gonna go around, use what, 120, so that is like 240,000 Kenya shillings as your net. That in the Kenyan context, in the Kenyan market, is a salary for, let's say, a manager, a not entry level customer service job. To give you guys perspective, would get you maybe a net of 35,000. So that means you're getting a gross of 50,000 Kenya shillings. So when you look at it that way, then the remote work, the remote companies are like the lesser evil, right? And how I term it is, it is not the best, but it is better than our current reality. So you get in there, get your money, get your foreign currency, spend it in your local country, invest it while it lasts, and yeah, see where it goes.
A lot of young people are like, and we're in a position like you're saying where unemployment is a huge problem for us, right? And in many cases, we'll take whatever solution we can get, to be honest, because unemployment leading to poverty, it's really a horrible way to live, fundamentally. Right? But remote work is nothing compared to like the people who go to, what did you say, Dubai or Saudi Arabia and get their passports revoked and get abused in these households, being helpers for the families, and basically become slaves to these families. Right? We're not talking about that. I think that's a whole different different thing. Yeah, just to contextualize the question. Yeah.
And I'm thinking of how creative the protests in Africa have gotten. I've seen protests where graduates are wearing their gowns, to prove a point that I've graduated but I don't have a job. So the economies in Africa are struggling in terms of creating economical opportunities and job opportunities for people who are in Africa. But also the red tape as well is significantly something that makes the remote environment thrive. We're talking about visas. If I want to get a job in another African country, there is that red tape of saying you can't work in here, you need a visa, you need this, we need to give more opportunities to the people within the country. And remote job comes with this framework which is sweatshoppy for me, to be honest, because it sounds like they are running capitalistic sweatshops where they get the cheapest labor but they get the most profits on the business, which is quite a model that makes sense. We don't want to lie, but also we are not debating it from a point of view where Africa has the most jobs and has the most resources in terms of employment, but they have the most resources in terms of employability, because the quality of the candidates is not decreased. I don't know, Lorraine, if you think differently, because the quality of the candidates remains high, but the company realistically saves on hiring someone who is on a different time zone and can be asked to work different times or American times, and they'll still obliged to working those times. But for me, I want you to finish that train of thought that you were on, Lorraine, in terms of you were saying get your dollars and possibly and potentially get out of there. Is it worth it for someone who is a graduate, maybe in an African country, to say, let me invest my time in remote work and let me slave away, so to speak, within this space and get out? Or is it worth it in terms of developing their career, or just in terms of bettering the prospects of their economical state at that moment?
I would say that it is actually better for you to, in terms of career growth, right? The kind of exposure that you get when you're working for a remote company versus when you're working for a local company is insane, right? You get to work with different cultures. You're gonna get culture shock at the beginning, but that's fine, right? That comes with exposure that you get. You get to learn how to interact with different personalities, different technologies that are being used that are perhaps you wouldn't even find in your local company. Say, for example, a machine learning engineer, or even like a data analyst, the kind of data you would be processing and the kind of exposure in that line of work for a remote company, completely different from what you'd get in the Kenyan context. Yeah, so think about it in terms of data analytics, right? So a data clerk in, let's say, a typical Kenyan company, the kind of data you're going to be processing, the kind of tools you're going to be exposed to are going to be completely different. Just because the market isn't yet mature enough, right? Then let's bring it back home, like to my field or career path. I'll be honest with you, right now, if I'm going back to the job market, if let's say I were to go back to the job market, I wouldn't look for like a HR officer role, right? Simply because I have under my CV, I have worked locally and I have worked globally. So the reason as to why I actually took the job over at Superside was because of the DEI aspect. So now when I'm coming back to the local market, I'm coming with something that the local market hasn't, or rather isn't ready for, and it's something new. So essentially what I'm doing is that I'm increasing my employability and increasing my value as an employee.
But something that I wanted to ask Lorraine is, do you think, or in your experience, are African companies profiting from this, and are African companies also hiring remotely within Africa, or is this something that is only being milked by Western and European companies?
I think we're seeing more and more African companies getting on board. To be honest with you, I think in Kenya we've seen an uptake of that as well, and it is. There are benefits that comes to having or running a remote company, right? When your employees are going to be more productive because they're working from the comfort of their home or wherever. There is no commute, so less stress to the employee. They're more productive. In some instances, some employers still think that, when you're working remotely, then you're just chilling in your pajamas and not doing any work. But as a remote worker, we know for sure that the amount you're putting in as opposed to like an on-site employee is completely different, right? So there is increased productivity and whatnot. To answer your question, yes, there are companies, remote African companies that are coming on board, not as quick as what you're seeing, let's say, in the Americas or even in Canada, Asia, yes. But yeah, they're there.
But are young Africans interested in the African companies?
Absolutely, yes. We've got, so the one that I can remember top of mind is called Quara. Now, I'm not sure who the owners of Quara are, but Quara is actually a company that is a remote SACCO company. So what they did basically was to develop an app. I don't know if you guys have SACCOs, but SACCOs in Kenya is a huge thing. People get conned all the time. You do have those, right? So if, let's say, a year
Sorry,
back,
for people who don't know, I think I'm confused. What are sakwas?
so SACCO is when like a group of people come together and then you put your money in a bank account, they reinvest it, and then at the end of the year you get dividends. You can also use that to borrow, like for loan, right? The financial institutions. So that is like a really, really huge thing in Kenya. And like I mentioned, people are getting scammed of their money, which is so sad. So normally, like a year back, if you wanted to get a statement, you'd then have to call a SACCO official. They would send you your statement and whatnot. Currently, there is an app for that. All you have to do is to register to the Quara app, and you get access to all your financial documents. Think of it like a bank mobile app, right? But just for SACCOs, which I think is really, really cool. Yeah. And when you think about it, had the fintech companies not come in the Kenyan market and just set up, the market for Quora to be successful, perhaps right now we couldn't have been talking about Quora. So, and I'm sure they've hired like remote workers as well because they are a fully remote company. So in that sense, we see like the economy shifting, maybe perhaps not as fast as the global north, but yeah, it is happening.
Maybe let's talk a bit more about that, because that's one thing that I'm experienced in reality from other people, but also when I was working for a remote company, which is there are people who are capitalizing from this move to remote work. So also for people who are, African people are in a desperate situation where they either want a job or they want to move from their job, from their current job, and they want the fastest transition from that position to getting a remote job. So I think I'm trying to ask two questions. What is the fastest transition that one can make from a place where they don't have a job or they want to change their job? But also the second part of the question is, how do I not get scammed?
Interesting. I always like to be, I'm a realist, right? I'm trying to be optimistic with meditation and all that. But on average, the lead time is between 6 to 12 months. So I always say this is not a get rich scheme. If you want to get into remote work and be like, I'm going to get rich within the next month because I want to land a job in the next month, it is possible because we've worked with people who've actually landed jobs within a month. However, the realistic time frame for you to have is anything between 6 to 12 months as of 2024. When I was landing my job in 2022, it was between 3 to 6 months. So we can actually see that the landscape is changing. More and more people are interested in remote work, which means that there is even more competition. How can you avoid getting scammed? There are telltale signs. I always say, one, if you're hard on the spot, I would love to believe that you're all special, but no, right? You do not get hired on the spot. You have to go through the interview process, which is really taxing and really lengthy. You go through 5 or 6 interviews before you get hired. So what makes you think that your skills are that special? Like, let's be realistic, right? So that is one. If you're hired on the spot, that is a possible scam. Red flag. Number 2, if there is no face-to-face communication with you, that is that is happening between you and the company that is hiring, again, a possible red flag, because all that these companies have is like their greatest assets are their employees, because remember, they're all remote. They don't have physical buildings. What they go by is basically their brand and their employees. So that face-to-face interaction is actually super duper important to them. The third thing is that if there are spelling mistakes in a job advert, then again, possible scam, right? Because these companies have actually invested, let's say, in their brand, in their employer branding. So yeah, just be wary of that. In September, actually, that reminds me, in September, most of our customers were getting interviews like this, like, I want to meet you in the next 20 minutes. And to that I say, scam. Because why are you not respecting my boundaries as a human being or as an employee, right? Or as a job seeker? If you want to interview me, then set it up well in advance, right? And yeah, true to that, most of those were scams. And the scams are actually coming from LinkedIn. So reasons as to why I never recommend LinkedIn as a job search tool. However, it is a very good tool when you're looking to just creating your own brand. Yeah, super good.
Yeah, but I think for me it's what you're saying, and I think there's a book that talks about the statement that only the paranoid survive. If it's too good to be true, then you have to start getting some flickers, because I was reading an article recently of a company that actually does face-to-face interviews as well, but they get you to another country, and then they get you to start doing drugs, and you start to work for your money. It's called pig fattening, or fattening the pig. That's the concept that is used for that thing. So I think you always have to be suspicious about everything. And I think one thing that Lorraine spoke about that's really important is talk to the employees. Like, reach out to people on LinkedIn, reach out to how strong their brand is. One thing that I saw that's super scammy with people, there's no company that's going to give you a laptop or ask you to buy some sort of licensing or something. If they're going to give you a laptop, the most that they're going to do is to send you money, not you sending them money to secure a laptop or secure tools. But also, like, if they fly you out fast, if they, because a lot of remote companies, they want to build a relationship with you, and you meet the team, you have meetings, you start on the role, you get onboarded, and then only later will they say, oh, now we need to meet as a team, and a lot of them, when I started my role in a remote company, the COO came to meet me within my country, not to say they were flying me out to that country, which happens, but I think you just need to be suspicious about those things as well.
Yeah. Like you said, when the deal is too good, think twice.
Hey, but man, desperation, hey? That's what they are counting on, Lorraine, what do you see happening with remote work in the next, say, 15 years? Is it exactly as it is now? Is it going to change?
I think it's going to change. I think we're going to have more and more Africans getting into remote work, which I am super excited about. I know there is talks, like when Amazon and Meta were calling or are recalling their employees to on-site. There was talks like, this is the end of remote work. And my take on that is, look, the companies that are hiring are not the Metas and the Amazons. We've got startup companies, either in the edutech, fintech, blockchain ecosystem, that are hiring, that are coming up, and they're all working remotely because they know the benefits that comes from having remote workers. So I think it's going to be big. And that is why we are on this journey, because we weren't, by the time the companies are thinking of, I want a remote worker and I want an African remote worker, then they can think of Beyond the Savannah as their go-to platform for getting remote. Yeah.
I'm telling you guys, there's a conspiracy, man. Since 2022, every month there's an article, the end of remote work.
Right?
There's somebody behind this and sponsoring it all. There's some nefarious entity leading this. I'm very suspicious.
I don't think practically remote work would end. I think 2022 just served to blow up remote work, but it has always been a reality. I remember even before COVID, I was working remotely, and it was the smoothest thing in working, and also something that allows you to put all your work in as well. So I don't think I think if there's someone running that they took the wrong off ramp. I think the future of companies is mostly imbued within remote work, and I think that's where the globe is going. But you have people that want to take a different route, and I don't blame them. But I think remote work is not dying, man.
Yeah. And think about it this way. Gen Zs are now getting in, right? And the Gen Zers, I absolutely love them. They're more on just their holistic self and what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So if your company isn't offering hybrid or fully remote, then let's just say in a few years from now, you'll have to kind of rethink your whole HR policy and employee handbook.
Yeah, because the whole 9 to 5 in the office thing, man, it's so old and outdated for our world now. I mean, the reason it was started in the first place was like assembly lines for cars at the Ford company. Right? This was Henry Ford's idea. By the way, the guy loved Hitler. Unrelated. But it's. I mean, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. So the whole 9 to 5 thing is quite outdated. I mean, if you're developing apps, for example, geez, man, you function quite differently. So I hope we stick with it for long, and I'm very hopeful. Not hopeful. I'm really counting on Gen Z and Gen Alpha after them to like run with it properly.
I like the fact that Lorraine said that one of the sites that she doesn't use as a job for job hunting is LinkedIn. I'm sure everybody was like, what do you mean? And she didn't proceed with that. But if people actually want to get on this journey, Lorraine, how do they first of all get hold of you, and what are the things, the resources that you that they need in terms of kicking off this journey? Since you say it, you don't want people to be jumping on the bandwagon of LinkedIn, how do they get hold of you and your services, and what else can they use to prop themselves up in the remote work journey?
So first of all, as an African youth, right? You shouldn't be sleeping on our website, which is www.beyondthesavannah.co.ke. It's going to be linked, I think, somewhere here, right? So don't sleep on that website, because what we basically do, what sets us aside apart from every other website, is that the jobs on our website are particularly curated to the African youth. So the jobs that are hiring in EMEA, so that is Europe, Middle East, and Africa, they're hiring in Africa. So what that essentially means is that wherever you are, you qualify to these opportunities, right? Based off of your geographical location. So don't sleep on our website. Then what you basically need 3 things at the very bare minimum. 1 is your CV, 2 is your LinkedIn profile, and then 3, you need what you're now calling an introductory video. Because as of January this year, we're seeing more and more companies asking for an introductory video. I mean, with the rise of AI and career coaches like myself, everyone kind of has like a bomb CV and an optimized LinkedIn profile. So, but then they're not able to walk the talk, right? That's why you also invest in talent readiness. So the introductory video, what essentially it does is that they use it for shortlisting, and they kind of use that to see, the candidates who outperform each other. So they basically use it for understanding how well your communication skills are, as well as how well you're able to sell yourself, which is something that we can actually help you with. Yeah.
Amazing. I personally want to see a move where as Africans we find it easy to get jobs, so 2 things that are important for me is for people to create opportunities for remote work, but also for everyone, if you're still watching at this point of the episode, for you to reach Lorraine and people like Lorraine who are career coaches and get you into remote work as well. And it's something that I picked up from the conversation that I want to continue on as well in the next conversations, Tabiso, is that I want to talk to people who worked as house helps and nannies in Oman, in Lebanon, and all those countries. We want to hear your experiences, and we want to talk about how we can increase awareness of how it is happening, but also how people are scammed into getting into those spaces, and how people can counter the desperation of seeing that as a good option rather than the reality of what it is, an oppressive way of treating Africans. Tabiso, your last thoughts?
I think I just want to reiterate, man. I want to see you keep going. I think the way we work, and the culture of work definitely does need to change, and remote work is part of that. It's a step towards that. At the same time, we do need to think very carefully about the kind of money flows that happen when people work remotely. We're just talking about the whole Americans in South Africa and Airbnb. I think something similar is happening in Costa Rica, and we need to think about those sorts of implications. But as a concept, I hope it just keeps going and growing.
Yeah, and I do thank Beyond the Savannah and specifically Lorraine for opening up our eyes, but also for taking the time to chill with us and share this information with us. I think we don't take this for granted, and we hope that people who are watching also engage in this space, because I know there's a lot of people who are in a crisis with unemployment, and as Lorraine also said, everybody who's above the youth age as well can be someone that can get help from Beyond the Savannah and enter the remote work space. My name is Ivan Munashikatsere. Today I was chilling with Tabiso and I was chilling with Lorraine. Lorraine is from Kenya, Tabiso from South Africa. I am from Zimbabwe. We don't talk enough about how we are going continental and how we are going global. But thank you so much, guys, for making time. Africans in Africa podcast. We out.